Grief is a roller coaster, folks. One may experience grief at any time in life after losing a person or a thing. You'll remember it. It's my anniversary, and she died that week. I remember it too strongly sometimes. There's another funeral, wedding, birth, whatever it is. It just takes us back. Even if it doesn't seem appropriate at the time, there are some things to say to a grieving person. There are some things not to say. Things that are really sincere and compassionate, and things that aren't. Try to avoid anything that tells the person to get over it. Anything that hints at that, or to move on, or to deal with it. I never use the word cope with grief. Some people hold grief seminars and they say you learn to cope with it. That means to manage it. How do you manage an emotion? I don't believe it's possible. I believe we endure it. But when I have to approach someone who is grieving, I use some rules. And number one, it's not on the screen here. But number one, when I want to approach them, here are some rules I've learned over the years. That unless I'm extremely close to the family, I wait until the funeral to contact them. I don't go by and bother them at home. I don't try to call them on the phone. They've got enough on their minds without my adding to it. So I just wait until the funeral to talk to them. Unless, of course, I'm the preacher and there are other things they need me to do. And when I do talk to them, I make the conversation as brief as possible. I've seen lines at funeral homes that stretch out the door because some folks can't seem to stop talking to the person at the funeral. I don't try to be dramatic at all. Whatever it is. I've seen some people kind of put on a show of how sorry they are. I don't try to do that. And I certainly don't talk about my losses. I don't get down into the pit with them. They're in a pit deep enough without my getting down in there with them and making it deeper. And I watch their faces. It may be they're trying to end the conversation. I try to notice that. And I try to get on about going somewhere else. And I try to see how tired they are. Many funeral directors are onto this now and bring a chair to the person. And if you're standing up there for 5 or 6 hours, you've got to be tired. And so I try to keep that in mind. I think you'll know if they want you around. I think that's something you could watch for. And if it's applicable, folks, don't say anything. Just hold out your hand. They're not really going to remember what I say to them anyway. They'll know I was there. I've written in many hearses where on the way back from the cemetery, the family would say something like, "Did you see so-and-so? Was so-and-so here?" They remember that. They don't remember a thing. They don't remember the funeral sermon. I've had many people ask me for the outline after it was over for many months. They don't remember what was said. It's proper, according to the authorities I'm reading, to email. Just don't expect a right-away answer. He's probably not checking his email during this time, or she is. Sending a text message is not appropriate. That's too much street language, I guess. But it's never appropriate. Their thinking now is, and I don't know if this is going to, because they haven't really studied it, that if you have Facebook or what's the other one?
Twitter.
Yes, don't tweet. But if you send condolences on Facebook, only if the person has already posted. And they tell you not to do that unless the person posted. What's it mean they posted? They've already put a note on it?
Yeah, they've already made it public.
It's always okay to send a card, anytime, but that's always okay. Here are some things that are appropriate to say. I'm sorry about your loss is always appropriate. But strangely, to say I'm sorry adds to the anger. I'm not exactly sure about the psychology of that, but evidently the person starts thinking, sorry about what would you do? But to say I'm sorry about your loss seems to be appropriate. Nothing wrong with that. I'm sorry about your loss. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. It's not wrong, it's appropriate. They probably forget it. I remember one time visiting a hospital room with a student, and this fellow was hooked up to all the machines, and wires here, and tubes there. And the young man said to him, if we can do anything for you, don't forget to call. When we got out of the hospital, I said, son, we're going to go by his house now. He said, why? I said, his wife probably needs the yard mowed, groceries brought to her and so on. But I said, please don't let me hear that you said that to anyone ever again. If we can do anything, don't forget to call. The poor guy's hooked up. He can't even get near a phone. Well, that wasn't appropriate given the circumstances. You know, when we went by that house, she did need to run to the grocery store. And he did mow that grass with my lawnmower, but he mowed it. Another appropriate thing to say is, what can I do for you? Usually you don't get an answer, but it's not inappropriate. It just says, I'm here, in essence. I miss John too. It's highly appropriate. I miss him too. Honesty is really the best policy. I want to tell you what I always say. The one I find doesn't hurt people's feelings. It always works. But before I do, I heard a preacher say to a lady one time, I don't know what I should say. That's honest. And there was nothing inappropriate about it. I don't know what I should say. Another one I heard was this one. This is the one I use. I'm thinking about you. And I use it with my hand on the person's shoulder. That way they know I'm there. They're not going to remember what I said. But I tell them I'm thinking about you. And it's gentle. It doesn't hurt their feelings. And it works. It's very appropriate. And finally, I say this to people sometimes after I've done the funeral. Let me know when you want to talk. And what I do there is follow that up with a visit in the next day or two. Let me know when you want to talk. Again, trying to get them to get the thought out here instead of keeping it in here. Let me help you carry it. Here's a couple more that I added, especially when you know the person's birthday is coming. That's a great note, Tony. I handed a lady a note like that at church one time. Let me know if you want to talk. That kind of thing. When I know about them, then it's easier to do that. Look at that last one. Can I take you to lunch that day? Used. The first pre-seminar I ever held was in, or near, that Jasper, Alabama. And Jane McWhorter was in that seminar. Jane McWhorter's husband, Don, longtime preacher in Fayetteville. They don't say Fayette, they say Fed. And they're both gone now. But after Don died, Jane felt terribly alone about 11 o'clock at night. She said because every night of their married life, that was the time they had to talk. That was their time together. And she was having trouble going to sleep. Jane's a highly intelligent lady. She said, I figured out what I missed was his voice. He's on a lot of tapes with his sermons. So she got a lot of his tapes, and she started playing so she could hear his voice. That didn't work. She was still having trouble sleeping. She said, he doesn't seem like he's here. So she got his aftershave and sprinkled him on the pillow next to her. Now she could smell him, and she could hear him, and she could go to sleep. I thought that was so interesting. That's how she handled what she was going through. And I thought, that's wonderful. What a wonderful thought that is. And so I can't sprinkle that on there for her. And if he took her to lunch, I might ask her if I could do that. Grievers will experience intense emotions for months in their personal lives and in the workplace. Sadness can overwhelm a griever suddenly and unexpectedly. When such happens, here's a very important thing to say. This has to be very difficult for you, or it's okay. It's okay. Because they think they're doing something abnormal. Things not to say. When a child dies, and I've heard this one, heard it personally and know how it hurts mom and dad. Well, you now have an angel in heaven. I told you what Cindy's mother said to her. You can always have another one. Preachers, when there's a miscarriage, that's a death. And that's as painful as anything could be. It's a death. It's not something to be looked past, looked over. Well, no, it's a death. Well, God won't put on you any more than you can handle. I already talked about that. I hear that as so many people. You know, darling, God doesn't put on us any more than we're able to bear. I don't know where that kind of thinking started. I think it started under John Calvin's teaching. And that kind of thing. Well, it was his time. Her time. Get over it. You hear what these things are saying? Get over it. Well, he's not in pain anymore. No, but I am. And that makes me more angry when you say that. Well, he's no longer a burden. I won't say that to someone. Now you have time for yourself, one lady told her. Now you have time for yourself. Cheer up. Tomorrow's a new day. Time heals all wounds. It also wounds all heals. What a terrible thing to say. Call me if you need anything. I already commented on that. Of course she needs something. She needs us to be around to help her. If you're close to the person who's grieving, I think you'll find it in your heart to know what to say and not to say. But just being there, I insist, is the best thing. Just being there. For a Christian, empathy comes as naturally as sympathy. We've been there. We feel it. We feel your pain. And oftentimes, I just don't know what to say. And all I say is, I'm thinking it. That's as honest as I can get. Because what do you tell a father who just lost his 19-year-old son? So, look at that one. He lived a long time and lost. Look at that long. That's a long time. Got two ends in it. That's a long time. That sounds like a Texas time there. At least he did not die young. God must have wanted her there because she was such a good person. Look at that one. These are things I've heard. You're young, you can always have another child. I guess it was his time to go. Everything happens for a reason. Life goes on. At least he didn't suffer. And here's one. Here's a person getting down into the pit with the person, trying to be as sorry as she is, I guess. I remember how I felt so badly when my mother died. You know it will be forever before you ever go over this. Please don't visit me at the funeral home if you do that. That's like the guy that walks into the hospital and says, you know, I had this, or my mother had this, and she died. Please don't visit. Please don't visit. Can't we teach ourselves these things? They're not hard. And the best thing is silence, just be there. Then I don't have to say anything. Christ has changed the meaning of death.
Amen.
He's conquered. We have a great chapter on the resurrection, 1 Corinthians 15. But we're told there, in this body in which I now live is sown a natural body. I'm living in a seed. In, same in, is raised a spiritual body. So whatever this seed is, it becomes a spiritual body. That's why the graves have to be open. It's much like the seed planted in the ground that grows into, as you folks grow over here in Arkansas, almonds, rice, and soybeans, whatever else you're growing. You know about the seed? Well, I live in the seed. And for me, Christ has changed the meaning of death. It changed the meaning of grieving, too. I haven't had a thought as a Christian, if the person who dies is a Christian, I'm going to see them. That's helpful. That's hopeful. That's important to me. It's also the case that I'm to comfort you and me with those kinds of words. Because when he comes back, the dead in Christ shall rise. He's going to open the graves first. And if I'm still here, I'll go after they do. But we'll all go together. Where will we meet him incidentally?
In the sky.
In the air. Never going to set foot on this old earth again. Physical death is still, however, present. And I want you to look at that last part. Because I've heard Christians being told, if you're a Christian, you should not be so sad when a death occurs. You remember what I told you about Richard and Doris, and she said to me, what about me? What should I have said to her? Well, you're a Christian. What are you worried about? You don't see him again. No, she's still grieving. And it's normal, and it's natural. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not sin. Why wouldn't I be hurt if my loved one's gone? Why wouldn't I miss that person tremendously? Why wouldn't I feel deprived or lost and so on? Well, I will. So it isn't the case that a Christian can't grieve because he's a Christian. And again, did Jesus ever cry at a funeral? We had an instructor at school tell the students one day that if you cried while you were delivering a funeral sermon, you sinned. Wow. I said, if it naturally happens, that's fine. I don't write it on the sermon. I might cry here. But I didn't believe what he said was true. Here's things you can do. Suggest this to people. See, I wrote these down somewhere. Write a biography of the deceased. That's so helpful to many. You're just getting those feelings out on paper again. That's really the process psychologically it's happening. Some people can draw a picture or paint a picture of the person that's gone. This is helpful. Oftentimes the family asks me to write the obituary. I give it to them, and then they write an epitaph. They start to write things that they remember, Brandon, about the family member. And sometimes they will get up at the funeral and say those things. And that's very effective. I remember when Ted Clark's wife's funeral, her grandsons and others got up and said some things about it. I think they called her Mimo. But it's very effective. But they have to do that ahead of time. Some people keep a journal on their thoughts and feelings and what they're going through. We've had books come out of those kinds of things. C.S. Lewis, for instance, that was from a diary of his. Integrating opposite and link us to the deceased is a good idea. One lady I knew created a photograph gallery of her husband. She had a bunch of scrapbooks with his pictures and sort of told his life story. That helped her. Several have written poems about their loved one. And again, C.S. Lewis wrote a book about it. Some have done that. Just so many things you can do when someone dies. Let's read that passage, Tim.
First Corinthians 12:25. That there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another.
Use your eyes. Look at that person that's grieving. And then look up. Have the same care when there's a schism in the body. One for another. Got to use your eyes. Got to look for people who need help. Whatever your hand finds to do what? Do it with all your mind. You've got to use your hands. You've got to help. We can use our eyes, our hands, our knees. Let's get down and pray to the Father. 1 Peter 3:12, his eyes are over the righteous. And our feet. Read that passage in 2 Samuel for us. You got an Old Testament there?
I've got one handy.
I don't know why preachers don't carry the whole Bible. They don't carry the
2 Samuel 12:16 through 20 is, David therefore pleaded with God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night on the ground. So the elders of his house arose and went to him and raise him up from the ground.
They had to walk there, right?
Yes.
Use their feet. Sometimes you just got to go. Keep going.
Oh. But let's see, where is that? Sorry, these words are small. But David would not, nor did he eat food with them. Then on the seventh day it came to pass when the child died, and the servants of David were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, indeed, when the child was alive, we spoke to him, and he would not heed our voice. How can we tell him that the child is dead? He may do some harm. When David saw that the servants were whispering, David whispered or perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he is dead. So David arose from the ground, washed and anointed himself, and changed his clothes, and he went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went to his own house, and when he requested, they set food before him, and he ate. Then
that passage is almost overwhelmingly different from the response most people make when a child dies. David grieved before the child died, and then he got up and walked away once the child was dead. Well, I can do that with my feet, but I can use all parts of me to help others and to help myself. Dr. Wolfeld told us one time, bereavement caregiving is now a college-level study. Yet, too many people in this country perpetrate myths regarding grief. Dr. Wolfeld said, let's encourage people to broaden their understanding about this so that they don't continue to be caught up in the myth. We need to broaden our understanding of how complex this thing is. And the myth number one is that grief and mourning are the same thing. Not so. And people often use the two terms interchangeably. He's grieving, he's mourning. Those are two separate acts. Grief is what takes place in my mind. It's my feelings, my thoughts, those things I'm experiencing internally when I lose something. Mourning is the outward expression of grief. Did he cry? Did he not cry? Did he scream? Did he holler? In our culture, we're allowed to grieve. We frown at mourning. Funeral homes are some of the quietest places I've ever been. But in the Far East, they're some of the noisiest. Those people wail and they carry on. They let it out. We don't allow that. Dr. Wolfeld said grief or mourning is grief gone public. And we are really not attuned to that. The message you often hear is, cheer up, Keith. Get over it. Learn to cope. Keep busy. You know what happens when you keep busy when you're grieving? You're grieving while you're busy. Those things don't fix the grieving as if we thought they did. It's a myth. And a myth is a female moth. No, that's a joke. So what happens? We go home and we do it in private and we never share it with anyone. Not allowed. You know, big boys don't cry. Well, there was a song played years ago on our station in Alaska. Big girls don't cry, and this guy played it every day. I hate that song. But it's typical of the way people think. They just don't do it. Grief and mourning are much more than words. I believe that both of those are gifts from my Creator. If I want to shout at the moon, shout at the moon, but do something, and don't say you can't do it. You're allowed to mourn. Give yourself the opportunity so to do. But in this country, we think they're both the same thing, and they aren't. Go ahead and mourn. And be happy that you can cry. Myth number 2, that there is an orderly and predictable progression in the grief process. All grieving is individual. I mentioned that 4 or 5 times already. It's unique. There is no ordinary process to it at all. One of the most severe consequences of believing that there's this orderly process, and once I get through it, I'll be done, is that people tell us how we should be reacting instead of letting us go through whatever it is we're doing. Dr. Wolfwood said, just as people die in different ways, people mourn in different ways. Expecting anything less would be to demonstrate a lack of respect, wow, for the uniqueness of the person. Teach me about your grief, and I will be with you. As you teach me, I will follow the lead you provide me and attempt to be an empathetic presence. Listen. So teach me. Whatever you're going through is unique. My goal as a caregiver then is not to get him through the process. Let's hurry up and get to the next step. My goal is to listen and let him teach me what he's experiencing. It will help him when he starts teaching. One of the things Brother Went had problems with, his son Jared was a wonderful high school footballer. And every time high school football season comes around, I go in and talk to Billy because I know he's going through it. Myth number 3. We should evade grief rather than embracing it. No, that's backwards. But in American culture, we're told to do that. We're not allowed to have permission to mourn. It's not allowed in this country. I guess we're Stoics. Zeno, the great Stoic philosopher, taught his followers not to mourn because he said self-control is a whole lot better than sorrow. I don't know where he got that. But I remember John 11:35, and I just say, that can't be right. That would mean my Lord was doing something wrong when he wept at Lazarus' tomb. But in public today in our country, we have carried on this Stoic philosophy. We have to have self-control at the funeral. And anything else is less than being Christian, or less than being right, or less than being American, or something. You know why people ask the question about how long grief lasts? Because we're taught we should get over it. Cope with it. I saw some classes at PTP this time, managing grief. I thought, I'm going in there because I don't know how to do that.
Amen.
And he didn't either. He was just saying things you could do while you're grieving, which is what I'm saying. Why would I be told, manage it, cope with it, because the other person doesn't want to deal with me while I'm grieving? Get over it, Keith. Come on, move on. Should be over it by now. You're weak for being in that grief so long. Or you're self-pitying. Get over it. Why are you feeling sorry for yourself? Let's have a pity party for Keith. You're crazy to grieve this long. Listen, I have the right to remember my grandson, James. And you will not take that away from me. I have that right. It's my right. But shape up, Keith, and get on with it. So grief is just a weakness in this country. But you know what some folks do? They get drunk at the funeral. Why? They're hurting, but they're not allowed to express it. So we found other ways to do it in America. Drugs, alcohol, all kinds of other things. When I refuse to allow you to grieve, when I tell you to be strong and suffer in silence, get over it. I'm saying to you, those are admirable behaviors. What you're doing is not admirable. You're not doing what's good and strong, right. You need to be doing this quietly and quickly and then efficiently and get through it and get over it. Get back to work, Keith, and let everybody know you're fine. I'm not mourning anymore. I won't hurt you. You can come around and talk to me. I'm not socially acceptable to those around me. But that pretense can cause pathological. And this person starts thinking, I must be crazy to still be grieving. I must be the only one that ever did this. And he starts to get down on himself. It's a myth to think that we should avoid grief. But it's taught in many different ways in this country, especially when you go out into society. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to be involved. Myth number 4. We need to learn how to manage or cope with grief. To speak to someone about resolving grief is ridiculous. What is man's biggest problem? Sin. Was the sin problem ever resolved? No. It was reconciled. God didn't resolve the sin problem. He reconciled it through his Son. I cannot resolve any problem between any two people. I cannot resolve your grief problem. Because in order to resolve any problem between any two people, I'd have to erase your memories. In order to resolve your grief, I've got to erase your memory. It's ridiculous to talk about problem resolution. Any book like that I avoid like the plague. How to resolve your problems, resolve your problems in marriage. Hogwash. I'd have to erase my memory. But can I reconcile? Can I be there and help? I can't solve your grief problem. You can't solve mine. You can't erase my memory. The way I'm thinking about it. But I can get it reconciled. You got two groups fussing in the church. We get them together and we say, how can we go on from here? Well, he did. I don't want to hear that. Hold on to that. We'll just go on from here. Because you're never going to forget what was said and went on before anyway. You heard about that guy that said every time he had an argument with his wife, she got historical? People do that. This idea of resolve, I have requests all the time. Come and help us resolve this problem. I write back and I say, that's ridiculous, Christ. You can't do that. You can't resolve grief unless you have some instrument that erases your memory. And why would you want to forget the person? I've been saying to you all morning, if you were listening. Don't worry about that person being on your mind. That's where he should be. Where else should he be? In your heart. Right in your heart. And nowhere else. One's goal is to manage or cope with grief. I don't think that's my goal. That's not my goal. In fact, Dr. Wolf said in class one day, that idea is not only unrealistic, it's potentially damaging. Because the person starts thinking there's something wrong with him, that he can't manage it. He can't cope with it. Myth number 5. Tears of grief express weakness. Well, you know, you shouldn't cry, that won't bring him back. It's almost like the argument that we should do away with capital punishment because that won't bring the victim back. Nobody will stop the other guy from committing a crime anymore. One fellow told me capital punishment doesn't stop crime. I said it stops that guy from committing it. So I don't know what they were talking about. Crying is God's way, well, folks, allowing me to release tension. Otherwise, why did he give me tears? His way of helping me. Grief cannot, should not, ever be prevented. Let it happen. You're going to be shocked, depressed, sad, angry. Let it happen. This thing enters every home eventually. It's common. But there are so many myths about it, especially in our society. But we have a terrible problem with the process of grief for some reason. It's just natural. Let it happen. So long before death occurs, I'm begging my brothers and sisters, let's develop a Christian attitude about this. It's real. It hurts. I want us to have honest discussions with our children. The child needs to go to the funeral. He needs to understand. And they do this a little bit better than we do. They're rather curious about it. But they learn. Any relationship that needed mending, why don't we take care of them before he dies? Then the guilt of grief won't be there, which is another process trying to overcome. Or any other thing, we can take care of them now and comfort one another. I'm not going to tell you to manage your grief. I'm going to tell you it's yours. Tell me your story. If tomorrow starts without me, and I'm not there to see, if the sun should rise and find your eyes are filled with tears for me, I wish so much you would not cry the way you did today. While thinking of the many things we did not get to say, I know how much you love me as much as I love you. And each time that you think of me, I know you'll miss me too. But when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand and said my place was ready in heaven, far above, and I'd have to leave behind those I dearly love. But as I turned to walk away, a tear fell from my eye. From my life, I always thought I don't want to die. I had so much to live for, so much left to do, it seems almost impossible. But I was leaving you. I thought of all the yesterdays, the good ones and the bad. I thought of all the love we shared. I thought of all the fun we had. If I could relive yesterday for even a little while, I would say goodbye and kiss you and maybe see you tomorrow. But then I fully realized that could never be. For emptiness and memories have taken the place of me. And when I thought of worldly things I might miss come tomorrow, I thought most of you, and when I did, my heart was filled with sorrow. But when I walked through heaven's gate, I felt so much at home, especially when God looked at me from his great white throne. He said, this is eternity, and I promised you today your life on earth is past. But here, life starts anew. I promise no tomorrow there, but today will always last. Since each day is the same way, there's no longer for the past. You have been so faithful, although there were times you did some things you should not do. But you have been forgiven, and now at last are free. So won't you come and take my hand and share my life with me? So love, when tomorrow starts without me, do not think we're apart. Every time you think of me, I'm right here. Did you realize that over there, there's no time? They're not waiting for us. There's no waiting. And when we get there, it will be as if we've never not been there. lives that are waiting. This is time over here. And during that time, please give yourself the right to grieve. May God bless you and keep you. Let's come back at 1 o'clock for that therapy session. Or after lunch, whenever that is.